Okay, good afternoon. My name is Aune. I worked 10 years for Open Air Museum as this is like a trainings of natural materials and building techniques. I live in log house. It's the traditional Estonian barn house dating back to 1892. And our children are the 5th generation, so log house. But I hope you open my eyes for the techniques in class, so thank you.
I'll transition you.
Yes. Okay, but let's get down to business. We have 2 presentations, and the first presenter is Patrick Moore. Patrick is a Canadian carpenter and a globally renowned master of Stereotomy, it was the word. He held degrees in construction management, heritage carpentry and masonry, and when I read this I thought, oh, I need an old man, really? But here you are. And with numerous certifications, he has made significant contributions to preserving historical sites worldwide, including the 2 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And the important thing, in 2014, he founded the School of Practical Stereotomy in Ottawa, Canada, which provided unique educational opportunities. And also, you supervised conference workshops on Monday and Tuesday, was it?
Yes.
Yep. You remember? Yeah. Okay.
Almost.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Just please welcome Patrick.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. This is a wonderful opportunity, so thank you. So today I'm going to show you the wonderful world of stereotomy. And it's an hour-and-a-half presentation, so my thought is we can go maybe about halfway, 45 minutes, and then we'll take a 10 or 15-minute break or something, and then come back just to get up, because an hour-and-a-half sitting can be a bit long. The beginning part of the presentation, I'm going to try to explain to you, generally speaking, what is stereotomy. What is this word? So I'll provide a definition, and I'll provide a few visuals so you can see what the definitions represent. It's a big world. There's a lot to it. It's not specific to a building material or a type of architectural style or something like that. It's just a field of knowledge, and ultimately what stereotomy enables you to do is to solve layout. Whether it's roof layout for rafters or vaults for masonry, it's just a visual, concrete representation of what a lot of us use math for, or algebra. So I'm going to walk you through the beginning part of that introduction and then show you some concrete examples of using the stone, because there's a lot of historical examples of it, and then get into some wood examples, and then the cultural significance of it as it's seen through the lens of the French, the Germans, and the Japanese, and then get into kind of more modern day stuff. Yeah. In terms of questions, we can do 2 things. We can questions during, and I can address them as we go, or we can save them at the end. It's whatever the group feels like. Sometimes during is nice because then other people might have the same question. So how about we do it during? So if you do have a question, just please raise your hand and we'll address it. And if it's addressed in the presentation, I'll just let you know. All right. So, opening slide. So this is it. The title of the presentation is called "The Art and Science of Stereotomy: An Organic Holistic Technology." And I learned of stereotomy when I first moved to France. So I have some experience working as a carpenter in Canada. I did my apprenticeship, and then in 2010 is when I moved to France for several years, and I did this very traditional apprenticeship called compagnonnage, which lasts a lengthy amount of time, 7 to 10 years. And when I was first introduced to it, I was kind of awestruck about what these young kids were doing with it, with their abilities and skills. Whereas when I would compare it back home to what we were doing, it was a very stark difference. So when I came back from France from my experience, I was very curious as to why do they have this in France, and why don't we have it at home? And just started to do a little research and looking into it, and that sort of stuff. And so I'm going to present to you a little bit about that as well. But part of that journey was I was interested in about technology, because not technology like gadgets, like phones and laptops and that sort of stuff, but technologies in how we develop and produce goods, right from ancient times to modern times. And I read a book called The Real World of Technologies by this Finnish woman named Dr. Ursula Franklin. And she used to teach at the University of Toronto in Canada. And she's an anthropologist, I think. And in her book, she has these two forms of technology called holistic and prescriptive. And both have existed since ever. But the one that we predominantly use in our modern society is prescriptive technology. And what prescriptive technology is, if I was to give you an example, is think of the assembly line, like when a car is made. So down this line, this item comes, and then the worker applies that bolt or puts on this button or whatever. Then down the line, this car goes, and each worker puts their individual parts, and then out comes this very complex, very systematic, engineered product. But along the way, it was an individual worker doing one little aspect of it. Whereas holistic technology, you have essentially one person performing all of those actions from the very beginning to the very end. And think of like an artisan or like a log builder. You would go to the forest and you'd be able to find a tree that you would like. You would cut it down, hew it, and do all these different processes. At the very end, you have a very beautiful log building. And the main differences between those two technologies is prescriptive technologies. It ultimately demands, how can I say this? Just as a worker, do as you're told kind of mentality. And it empowers management through procedures and processes. Whereas holistic technology, it empowers you, the individual, because you yourself are understanding the technology and how it's employed. And so this is why, kind of a long story, but this is why I gave this presentation on organic holistic technology. Because learning stereotomy, you yourself are being empowered how to kind of see or think in 3D, as opposed to me teaching you AutoCAD or SketchUp or some other tool. So I'm enabling that technology, so you become essentially dependent on this technology. That for me to perform my work, I need this technology to do it. Whereas with this, you don't need any technology. You can do it yourself because you understand it. So, yeah. So here's the definition. So when I came back from France, and I started to try to present this stuff, and just trying to teach it, because I thought there's something to it. And so, it's not just me thinking that there's something to it. UNESCO says it as well. So they've listed this knowledge through the French craft onto the list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. The Japanese have it as well in a different context, and so too did the Germans. But when I first come around to explaining this word stereotomy, people were like, stereo, what? Never heard of this word. And so that's why I provide a definition. So stereotomy is defined by this man, Louis Mazerol. He's a Copenhagen carpenter from the 1700s. He defines it as the art of representing objects in section, elevation, and plan in order to cut them out. So different drawings, different views, perspectives. And then the dictionary version, dictionary.com, it's the technique of cutting solids, a stone or wood, to specified forms and dimensions. So when I read the definition, it's like a little vague. It's hard to grasp exactly what does that mean. So I have a video, so I'll show you a video. Do people remember Walt Disney? People have heard of Walt Disney, I'm assuming? So Walt Disney had a short video that came out in the 1950s, I think. And it's when Donald Duck went to Mathematicland, or something like this. Remember this as a kid? Maybe? Anyways, in the video, there's he encounters this kind of mythical character, and he's describing what math is. And in here, he describes about objects and slicing objects. And I was like, oh my god, that's what stereotomy is. So here, I'll play it.
If we spin the triangle, we have a slice the cone. The cone is full of useful mathematical shapes. Slice it again. Slice it several times. The orbits of all planets and satellites can be found in the cone. No matter how you slice it, it's always mathematics. A slice like this gives us the reflector of a searchlight. A slice like this, the mirror of a giant telescope. A line on a cone, and we have a drill. And the spring. Now you're ticking. For all of man's scientific achievements. The mind knows no limits when used properly.
So that's it. And it's basically stereotomy, you're sectioning and you're cutting objects, whether it's a cone or a cylinder or surfaces or curved surfaces or planes interacting with one another. That's what, in essence, what stereotomy is. And it's how we discover true lengths and angles to build or, create this object. But he had it's kind of a funny movie, but if you listen to it again, he's got some pretty empowering kind of messages, and one of which is that your mind is the most powerful thing. It's where all your creativity comes from, and if used properly. So that's why I go back to the beginning of the presentation of being a holistic technology, that if I'm empowering you, it empowers you, and so you're creating your own, you're exercising your own brain and your own mind. Yeah. Oops. Okay, so another little visual of what, so now from this movie to drawings, and how we represent objects in a drawing. So picture this in your mind. You have this object. Okay, it's a three-dimensional object, regardless of the shape. But what we do is we slice it, like in that movie. We slice it here, we slice it there, we slice it here, and then we project those slices onto a two-dimensional surface. So you can see in the background. So think of like a lens. You have a light and a shadow that it casts. So while all those three shapes on the two-dimensional views are real, put together, you form this three-dimensional shape. So it's the study or we look of all these different objects and how they interact with one another to create this shape. And so there's actually part of, so I bring this up because there's a physical part of the brain that deals with visual spatial mapping. And it's the very top there, it's the parietal lobe. So when you're thinking in 3D, whether you're laying out, notches in a log building or your mortise and tenon work, or if you're giving directions to somebody, the part of the brain that deals with the visual spatial map of the world is that part. So when you're thinking, that's the part that you're using. And on top of this, there's a developmental psychologist, his name's Dr. Howard Gardner, and he has this theory. It's probably more practical. Back when he presented it, it was new, but it's probably more widely accepted today, the theory of multiple intelligence. So it's the idea that being smart isn't just one aspect. There's multiple areas of being considered smart. And for this purpose, we look at the top right, the spatial, seeing and mapping the world in 3D. So not only do we have a part of the brain that deals with this thinking, but according to Dr. Howard Gardner, there's an actual intelligence behind it, so we can monitor it. And so, what does, in his terms, what's the concept of this intellect? Is that people who possess this form of intelligence can, for example, think of a location or a space that they're not in and replicate its spatial qualities. Think of an architect or a designer. That's exactly what they do. And when they do replicate this space, they're able to do so in a three-dimensional format. Moreover, they can think in terms of space and how they can relate to it, like a fly sitting on a wall and observing things. That's what we do when we design something in 3D, space, relationships with our body in space. That's this intellect. So to get you thinking about and warming up that part of the brain, I have a couple of these little IQ tests. So take a look and see if you can solve and give an answer. So you can blurt it out if you want. If you think you know the answer, you shout it. And it's just for fun. And to be honest, when I first looked at these, I got them all wrong. D, okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's D, yeah. So what you're doing is in your brain is you're taking, these two objects are related, right? Those two are the same object. And this object is rotated. In which rotation? And then you take this one and you rotate it the same way. So your brain is mapping this in 3D and you're trying to take this object. Okay. Rotate it once 90 degrees. Which one is it? D. So let's give it a little harder one. So which of the shapes below is the rotated version of that shape? Okay. Just rotate it. It's not saying which way it's rotated. Just
they be all of them the same representation of the top of the
okay.
That's a question.
Well, I'm not giving the answer right away. I'm going to wait maybe like 10 seconds. Yeah. Okay. Also 3. So we have 1, 3, and or all of them. Okay. So you changed? Yeah, 3. Okay. Give another 5 seconds and we'll get the answer.
I want to say 2.
Don't say 2. There's my answer. Okay, I'll give the answer. 1 and 3. 1 and 3. So, yeah. So if you have to map this object, right? And the relationship of each one of those cubes relative to the previous one, right? So you have this object, you try to rotate it. You can see that 2, this cube on the back, is going the wrong way. And number 4, it looks like something's missing on the tail end. When there should be maybe 2 cubes or something here. So 1 and 3. So these first 2 examples, we have a three-dimensional shape or object, and we're just rotating it. But the next example, and the last one, is a 2-dimensional, where you have a plan view, so you're looking like a bird's eye view from above down, and you have a side view, looking at it straight on, like an elevation view. So these 2 are the same object. Those 2 go together. This is the plan view of which one of those. Okay. first time I've heard that one. Color doesn't match because it's telling you that. But also, you don't know the color. Like on this view, I don't know the color of, let's say if it's a wall. I don't know that because you can't see it. So it's telling you that, well, colors don't match. I'll give a few more moments and then I'll give an answer.
I'll hazard T.
Going out on a limb. Lost? Okay. That's okay. Okay. Want me to give the answer? W, okay. All right, so E is not the answer. When I first did it, I thought E as well, because of the color, it matches. But if you count out the number of steps, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. If I count out E, I got 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's missing one. The right answer is W. And so I can count out the steps in W. It's the only one that works. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So in the middle one, where is the fourth shape in the middle one at the top? I see a conical, a
1,
square.
2, 3, 4 is the flat section.
But the one above it, in the
Here?
above it, yeah. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I don't see the fourth shape at the top.
Right here. It's a flat section.
Okay.
It's just flat. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like a pyramid that's been sliced at the top. Yeah. So W. And so again, going back to so there's that part of your brain working, there's that intellect. But what you're doing is you're taking these two and you're trying to make a three-dimensional object. I mean, maybe I'm speaking for myself. You're trying to figure this out, okay? Got this shape, I got these sides. Now, what would this look like? Make it a plan view. A two-dimensional representation of this three-dimensional object. And this is exactly how we practice. And this is, and honestly, it's the best way to practice when you're first learning. And I'm not saying you have to do this for the rest of your life, but when you first learn the subject, this is the best way, even though it's the hardest way. Because we instantly want to go to the easy route and to use technology in the computer, which is fine. I'm all for it. But when you're first learning something, this would be the best way. And the reason for it is because you're forcing your brain to think. And it's very hard. And it's very slow and painful. Yeah. So one of the practice methods that we utilized when we were looking at stereotomy is we create these things called a net. An N-E-T, a net. And all it is a flattened out version of the three-dimensional object. So in this case, a cube, if I take a cube and I unfold the cube, I get this T shape. Kind of looks like a church. So I can cut that out of paper, tin, wood, whatever, and then refold it to create my object. So here's a video of what that looks like. And so you'll see in the video the object morphs, but you'll get the idea. So it starts when it's together. So here you have what looks like a soccer ball or something. So you have this three-dimensional object. You can take this object and unfold it or unravel it. So there it is. So now I can cut it out with leather or whatever. And here's another example. So it comes up and morphs into this tetrahedron or whatever this is. I can take it and unfold it, enabling me to cut this out of a flat surface or a flat material. plywood, metal, whatever. So these are what they call developable surfaces. A developable surface is something that I can unfold without distorting the image or distorting the object. Unlike what they call undeveloped or non-developable surfaces, think of a sphere. If I think a sphere, and that's why we see maps. When you look at a map, you see Greenland is this massive country. It's like sometimes in some maps it's bigger than Africa, but it's not. It's tiny in comparison. But it's because as you unfold this sphere, it distorts the upper and lower portions of the world to make it rectangular. You know what I mean? So the net of a sphere would look like orange slices. And the thinner these orange slices are, the more accurate your representation is of that sphere. So up to the point where they're just infinitely small lines. So this is one of these practices that we do. We create, in terms of construction, stereotomy for carpenters is used mainly when it comes to the roof portion. So you have hips and valleys or just a regular gable-end roof. What you're looking at ultimately is just sections and planes and surfaces. That's what you're looking at. And so here, in this, what we call this net project, we have a plan view of the house, kind of outlined in bold here. And all of these triangles all around is me doing, like in that video, I'm slicing this object and then folding it down so I can see it. I can see what this, for example, if I take a slice from point C to F, I can take that slice and I can rotate it down so I can see it here. So there's a valley and a hip. It's a valley and a hip because there's my hip here, there's my valley. It's an inside or outside corner. So I can just slice it, and all these dotted lines, that's what those are, just me slicing this up. And then with this information, these elevation views and plan views, I take this and I compile it, certain lengths, and I create this one up here, called the net. So I can literally take that, cut it out with scissors or a knife or whatever, refold it, and then I get my little roof. And why is that important? It's because you're practicing. You're practicing what volumes and shapes and what this looks like to design. So now when I want to build a house, I want to build a roof, that's all I'm doing. I'm just thinking of a conceptual idea of overall shape, size, and how I relate to it. So I'll ask the group, what do you think this looks like? Here's a drawing, a net. Can you describe to me what you're looking at? Describe to me these two objects.
Two cones that make each other.
Okay, why two cones? Why not maybe two pyramids or?
Because there is a top view that shows a circle with a wave,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have the side view with two triangles,
Mm-hmm.
and how do you say that?
The net.
The net
Yes.
shows the two cones
Yes.
of one cone gets inside of the other.
Right. Good. Yep. Perfect. So it's relatively straightforward. So I can take again those flattened out surfaces, cut them, out of tin or whatever, refold them, and there it is. You got these two cones. So there's my elevation view, and then there's my plan view. And of course, people will say, well, we don't build cones in a roof, you idiot. Yeah, of course we don't. But you're missing the point. The point is that these are exercises. You're exercising your brain just like you would exercise going to the gym or something, You exercise so that when it actually comes time to building, your mind is a bit stronger. That's really it. So let me show you what what they call a stereotomical drawing look like. What does this drawing look like in practical, in the real world? Well, this is one such example, and it comes from an old book, an old French book, but these are like coffee table books. They're very nice, beautiful, colored, and what makes this drawing unique, this type of drawing different than other types of drawings like architectural or orthographic drawings, is that a stereotomical drawing has all of these different views. It has plan view, elevation view, so we're thinking orthographic. It has an architectural, like here's a bullseye window with curved moldings, and then has a perspective sometimes of what the roof looks like. So you can see in this case, it's a very elaborate curved roof. But the stereotomical drawings are also what they call working drawings. So they're actual physical sheets or drawing on the ground that we take our timber or stone or whatever and place it on our drawing. And then we take that information, lay out of our piece to cut. So the working drawing aspect of this is right here, that lower section. So what you can do with your drawing is you can take an individual component, whatever it is, a rafter or whatever your pieces are, the technical words, and I can take that and isolate it and then and remove it from the rest. And so here, I can now take my timber, a bigger size, place it on my drawing, and transfer this information onto my piece. Then I can cut it, I can manufacture it, process it, then I can go to site and install it like a piece of Lego. So everything's already pre-cut. So technically nothing should, I mean, if in a perfect world, you don't go to site and measure, everything's already done. So on site, it goes a lot faster. Literally like just putting Lego together. But in the real world, this is what it looks like. In this case, these are Japanese carpenters working on their stereotomical drawings. Full size on the ground, or somewhat reduced. And, you know, you guys at the workshop, you know what it looks like now. It's a scaled down drawing, or ideally the larger the better. So it's just a drawing on a sheet of MDF, or right on the concrete, or like on a deck like this. Here are some French carpenters. So this is what I did for several years in France. Minimum once a month, we would go to a shop, and we would have like this model building session. So you give it a task model that you have to practice. And so you do your drawing on 2 sheets of MDF. You got your big straight edges and chalk lines and all these tools, and you can see they have the timbers on the side, that when they get a certain amount of layout, they take their timber, place it on the drawing, mark it, extrapolate it, and then they can cut it. And you can see in the background, small bits, but practice models. It's just for years and years and years, you just practice every month, hoping to get better. So that's what it actually looks like today in modern times. But let me show you a historical example. So this is a technology that has existed as far as we can tell. Basically, when humans started to become humans, we've been drawing things out two-dimensionally. But this is the best example I have so far been able to find of what a stereotomical drawing looks like in medieval times. So this is out of Wells Cathedral in England. And the mason, the master mason of the cathedral, had this little room where he would do the drawing. And it's called, masons call this drawing a tracing floor. So if you go to Google and type in tracing floor, you'll find this. But you can kind of see etchings on the floor. Well, the floor is made out of plaster, lined plaster, thin, like fine sand. They would plaster this, and then they would etch directly into the floor of their drawing. Whatever it is they're drawing, if it's a vault or an arc or something. So here's some close-ups, and you can see that there's layers to this floor. And ultimately, what the mason was looking for was a template. Once they solved this template for a certain shape, then they could pass this template over to the stone carvers and say, okay, now carve me hundreds of these stones, and that will give us the column. And carve me 50 of these, and that will give us the vault. But once they have their template, then they can plaster over that old drawing and start another one for other parts of the construction. So that's why we have layers. And in 2012, there was a pair of architectural students doing their thesis, their master's, and they digitized this flooring. So they took all these modern technology to get a digitized version of this right down to the millimeter. And so we see here all these kind of grayed out lines. Those are every single little etching in this floor. But the beauty of the technology and what they're able to do is they can kind of play with the drawing now, right? They can take accurate measurements without physically being there. And what they discovered is, so here in black are actual etchings, but the red is an extrapolated version of what they think is there. So you can see here you have these arcs coming up. And what you're looking at is a plan view of a vault. And so with this and their technology, they could take accurate measurements, and then they laser scanned the cathedral, and they were able to link the east cloister vaults of Vaults Cathedral directly to that drawing. It was the exact same size. Well, probably within a couple millimeters or so. But kind of like to no surprise, this is the drawing. This is this knowledge that built this cathedral. And so another example of this tracing floor is out of the Gloucester Cathedral, again in England. So you have two photos. You have one on the left, that's the tracing floor, and the one on the right are those templates I was telling you about. Or the masons will look for this template and they can pass that template off. But you can see the templates hanging up on the left side of the window. So there's that tracing floor, again a close-up. And then similarly, like the previous one, they digitized it, and now they have this digitized version of it that they can play with. And both of these tracing floors, this one and the one previously, date back to about the 1300s, 1200s, 1300s. Yeah.
Is it a coincidence that this, what we're looking at here is commonly referred to as tracery?
Tracery, yeah.
Is it a coincidence that it comes from tracing floor?
Yes, well, that's the idea, yeah. But in the previous example, like this one, they were able to get individual stones out of this drawing for the vaults. Yeah.
What is the material of the template? Sorry.
I think it's like tin.
Okay.
Yeah, or wood. Probably back then it would be wood, just like a wooden board. But you can see probably or appreciate the value of this template, right? Like, I mean, now if I lose this template, it's like, oh shit, I gotta do this whole drawing again. So the masons back then, the master masons, would often have like this locked room. Only him and his apprentice would have access to, because if he had some rival that would come in and steal these templates, now it's like, oh man. So, yeah, you can see there's like some formation of secrecy now and like trade secrets, and I'm not sharing this information because now I'm, building up a competitor, and because now you can start seeing all, and there's actually a couple of good books about family lineages of masons, and it was often this knowledge would always get passed from father to son, down that line. So it was one of those things that's probably a true trade secret. But here's some other kind of minor or smaller versions of these tracing floors. This one's out of, I believe, in Spain. Yeah, the Tui Cathedral in Spain. Again, same time period, 1200s. And in this case, it's just kind of etched directly into the stone floor. And here's another one. This is the Saint-Etienne Cathedral in Bourges, France, 1300s. So I may not be able to read that, it might be a little small, but I'm changing into the next portion of the presentation, which I'll give you concrete examples of like actual construction examples of stereotomy. But I wanted to give you this quote because I feel it's important for people to appreciate, recognize the value in doing something by hand. Okay, so there is this famous American architect. His name's Michael Graves, and he had in a famous journal called the New York Times. He would have this monthly publication about architecture, and in one of his editorials, I'll read the quote. He says, quote, "Architecture cannot divorce itself from drawing, no matter how impressive the technology he gets." Again, this is in 2012. Drawings are not just end products. They are part of the thought process of architectural design. And furthermore, without the simplicity and directness of the relationship between pen and paper, he's concerned that architects will lose the ability to develop visual ideas in their minds. Powerful statement. So, quote, "Replacing hand sketching with other technologies will limit architects instead of expand their capacity." And this quote I got from Autodesk. Autodesk is a 3D software, so even I think they're making that statement too. So I'm just showing you the importance of when you're learning something, first do it by hand. It sucks, it's hard, it's long, but it's the best thing for you. Okay, so some real examples of stereotomy. I'm going to go from kind of ancient ancient times and very quickly bring it up to modern times. But I want to show you in this part of the presentation that ever since humans were developed, we've always been drawing things two-dimensionally that represents a real life building, whatever that is. Okay? So the first kind of mankind's first architectural drawing is this. Okay, it's not a blurry photo, it's just a close-up. And this comes from the Neolithic period. And they found this in near Barcelona, in Spain. And what you're looking at is, you have an outline, this like rhomboid shape or whatever that is. And then you have these like dots in this photo. What they think, the archaeologists are just, people who are a lot smarter than me in this area, what they say is that you're looking at a campsite. But a campsite, and this person was trying to depict depth in the drawing. Like Van Gogh, I think. Or Picasso. No, Van Gogh, I think. They were always trying to depict depth of a field. Well, that's what they're doing here. And this dates back to 14,000 years ago. Yeah. We've always been trying to have this 3D view on a two-dimensional surface. So this is what they believe that drawing represents. Just little huts. And if I fast forward quite a ways at the time, we have these like stone structures. And this is, I think in Turkey. Yeah, the Middle East. Yeah, up to this point, I'm just memorizing stuff. But what you're looking at here are these drawings like this on the surface of these stones. And the drawing is depicting a scaled down fence line. Think of it that way. And what they did back then, this is 8,000 to 7,000 years old, they would herd animals into this like trap, and then they can get them. And so they would first depict a scaled view drawing of what they wanted to build full size on these stones. It was a smaller drawing. But then these fields, there's these big massive fields that they would put stone around. And so there's like kind of the first instance of, okay, we're going to take something that's this big, and then how we work with it is scale it down, and then we can depict it. And then now we can work with it full size. So that idea is, 7,000 to 8,000 years old. I'm assuming even later than that. But here's some of those examples and how they discovered it was a drawing for this stuff. I'm not versed into it very well, but if I fast forward even more, in ancient Mesopotamia, there's some of these clay tablets, plan views of houses, dwellings, buildings. So here's an example. Here's another example. These ones I believe are in Paris. Yeah, so this is third millennium BC, so a couple thousand years BC. And then one of the better examples of this type of drawing is here, on these little statues. So there's on the lap of one statue has this plan view. And associated with that plan view on the side of it is a scale. They tell you, here's for every millimeter represents 1 meter, or whatever. And that's thousands of years BC. And then, again, if I fast forward, so ancient Egypt, they would create these drawings or these plan views on papyrus or papyrus, paper. And so here's I believe, a tomb of Ramses II. And they would create all these different tombs and layers. But let me ask the group, what do you think these darker yellow spots are?
Doorways.
Okay. Anything else? Stairs. Yeah, I thought stairs. Well, they're doorways. Yeah. So I first looked at it, I thought stairs too, but stairs you can see here, at the very bottom there, and then you have individual steps. Those are doorways. There's a plan view, but there's an elevation view of a doorway. They sliced it and they just rotated it down, like an elevation view, right on the spot. And I showed this, I did a presentation for another group once, and there was a child developmental psychologist that was in the group. And then later on, she was talking about this drawing, because apparently children, when they first start drawing as a child, they do exactly that, just naturally. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And then I went home, and sure enough, one of my kids, when they were trying to draw the photo of our house, and they drew on plan view the doorway folded down. I thought it was amazing. It's just part of the human part of the brain that, that's the way we work things out. So here's another example of those doorways and these tombs, plan views and scale. And then fast forward, to ancient Egypt, Romans, excuse me. The Romans would then also do these big drawings. So in this case, this is like a big city plan, where, for theaters and roads, dwellings. So there's another section of this fragment. You can see the theater there. So the point, one last one here. And then between the, I think they call it the Dark Ages, between the fall of the Roman Empire until the 1300s or something, there's not much evidence of much anything, I guess. But they have this one plan, the plan of St. Gall, and it's I think on parchment, some kind of paper, and it depicts a very elaborate little town. So it's got a lot of rich history in there. So my point in all of this, showing you all these drawings, is that forever we've always been creating drawings two-dimensionally. So there's part of us, just part of the brain that works that way, which is why I go back to the importance of drawing by hand at first. Okay, so I'm going to give you real examples of the use of stereotomy, so not just drawings and this theoretical stuff, but how stereotomy is used in construction. And so the first examples I'll give is stone, because stone is we have lots of stone buildings that are still erect and up. So the first example, although it's very primitive, but I want to show you this is like ancient Bronze Age. It's I think it's the oldest current bridge, and it's in Greece. And it's not cut stone, it's just kind of like, put together, pillared up. But they use this corbel technique where the stone above is slightly projected past the stone below, and by corbelling, they can create arches. And so, here's another example of this corbelling technique. It's a good way to create an opening in a wall for a doorway or for a bridge or a window or whatever, but the downside is that you can't make big spaces, but without it just kind of collapsing on itself. So here's a bridge, I think this is like in the 1300s in Indonesia, where you can see the pillars are closely spaced together. They couldn't get big spans. And it wasn't until the introduction of the true arch into this part of the world that they were able to get big spans. So the true arch, the difference is that, I can get close, I think the next one I might have it. Yeah, like that. A true arch. So a true arch is having that shape, semicircular or Gothic or whatever, but the individual stones are cut precisely. And that enables a bigger span. So the oldest known true arch is in ancient Iraq, 2100 BC. So then if we fast forward, the best examples that we have currently are from the Romans. But the Romans, they didn't invent the true arch. They, of course, dated before them. But there was an older civilization called the Etruscans that had this knowledge or this technology of creating semicircular arches. But the Romans kind of took that and they developed it, and through their engineering and their robust military, they were able to expand and then creating these aqueducts and infrastructure, all based on the use of stereotomy and this ability to create this true arch. So the true arch is the top left examples, where you can see all these individual stones are cut. Now, in terms of architecture, so if I was to take this arch and extrude it, like pull it, I make a barrel vault. That's this one. Or these three examples. I can make this long barrel vault. And the way that the structure of a semicircular true arch requires that you have large buttresses to hold up the structure. So that's what this is. This big, like a lot of this masonry buttress to hold it up. Otherwise, it would collapse. But then if I was to take two barrel vaults and cross them like a T, I create a groin vault, the one on the top right. Now, the advantage of a groin vault is that about 70% of the load is transferred through into the columns, into the piers in the corner. So now I can reduce the size of the wall, the thickness of the walls, and make this higher. And so then you can see all this, like this type of from Romanesque architecture and Byzantine era architecture, then we're getting into like Gothic architecture where buildings become very, very high, very, very thin, you get this beautiful tracery. But all of that comes from this ability to be able to cut stone. So here's an example of this barrel vault, how they think they would have constructed them with the formwork. And then I'll give you some real examples. So in this is a church in the south of Spain, and here you can see inside of the church, as soon as you walk in, you have that barrel vault. And you have all those little arches, and on top of that arch are these cut stone. And then if I go to the very end of that church, right where the cross is, and I look up, there's a dome. I'll show you. So there it is. So keep in mind, this church dates to the 1200s. And so the ability of the artisan or the stonemason in the 1200s to cut this stone is pretty exceptional. So let me point out a couple of things in this photo. So the problem that they've encountered, well, since ancient Mesopotamia, was how can I support a dome, a circular dome, on top of a square base? You see that? It's in the corners. So see the corners here? You have these elements. This is called a squinch. And the squinch, what it does is it supports this portion of that dome in the corner. And it was a problem they've had since ever, is how can I support that corner? And it's through this. Okay, so another example of this barrel vault, and this is the best example, the kind of the grandest example of barrel vaults, is in Burgundy, France, 1200s. And I'll give you one last example. So this is another church in Italy, 11th century, and you can see that barrel vault, you can see the dome in the end. And what makes this one interesting is that you can see the dome is supported by circular walls, as opposed to the previous one, which was square, which required squinches to support. So if you look at the windows, I got a close-up shot of the window. So notice how the window is circular, it's semicircular, but it's also the wall itself is curved. So in the 1100s, stonemasons were able to create these three-dimensionally curved pieces of stone that were structural. And not only that, but if you look at the window itself here, you can see how the window is a lot smaller. Well, these stones are actually tapered out like a trumpet to allow for more light to come in. So it's pretty astonishing. Like for me, a lover of stereotomy, I thought that's an amazing example of stereotomy in the 11th century. They were able to figure this out using templates and this drawing techniques. Okay, so domes. I got a couple of these examples of these domes, but I just wanted to show you that domes, it's not a new technology. It's been around for thousands of years. So these are some examples of these beehive domes. It's using this core belling technique, but I just wanted to show you that we've had this idea for a very long time. But a really good example, and a very old example, is in this place, the Basilica Qualidose in northwestern Syria. And this was built in 460 is how it's close. But there it is. So you see that semicircular arch, and you can see the layers of the stone that go around. Same thing, those stones are three-dimensionally cut. They're cut plan view and cut in a dome on the inside. So this technology, this knowledge has been around for a long, long time, from ancient Syria to the Egyptians. Okay, so now I want to show you a couple of examples of these groin vaults, because this is when we go to cathedrals and you look up and you see all these vaults, it's typically what we look at or what we see are groin vaults. So I want to show you some examples of this. So that's the definition. It's the two barrel vaults coming together at 90 degrees. And the intersection, so there's like a drawing of a 3D view of it, but the intersection is what's interesting. And so the intersection of those two barrel vaults creates a true ellipse. So it's kind of like that shaped. And here's a drawing for it, but that shape, you can see it in red here, there's the elevation view of it. And it's, the Romans were trying to solve this complexity of how can I make this groin vault bigger and grander. And I'll show you how they accomplished it. So there's a couple examples. Top left, you got the barrel vault, and then you have all these different types of groin vaults. Rib vault, fan vaults. And I'll show you all of them. So here's one of the oldest examples of a groin vault in the baths of Rome, Italy. So built in the 200s, but you can clearly see the form or the idea, right? You got this barrel vault going this way, back and forth, and then left to right or right to left. You have other ones cutting it. And you can see the intersection. So if you follow my finger from this point all the way to that point, there's the ellipse. The downside of this type of construction is that you can build about that size. You couldn't get really big until they were able to cut stone along the ellipse. Then they could make a bigger ones. So I'll show you. So here's another really good example of these groin vaults, cut stone, but the ellipse is still not being used. This is 500, yeah, 520. So you can see all the individual stones are cut, but they're still having this core belting technique of one stone being slightly projected past the one below. Then here, now rib vaults. That's where they start making the masonry along this vault. So here, now we have this really big grand structures, because then that's the structural element. And more of the load can get transferred down vertically into the piers. So this is in Burnham in the UK, built in 1093, 1133. And then the oldest rib vault that we have to date is here in France, 1056. But you can see the infill. So notice the empty space between the rib vaults. It's kind of like rough mortar and plaster. And it's not too little later on, you'll see that this space becomes filled with accurate cut stones. It's pretty impressive. And here's another example of these types of rib vaults, what they call stellar vaults. This one's again in the UK. But what I'm ultimately showing you in all of this stuff is that it's based on this idea of using stereotomy, so the cut stone that enabled them to construct these buildings. So there's that stellar vault pattern. And then this is my favorite one. So if anyone's ever been to Spain, if you ever go to Valencia, Spain, it's a port town, they have this hall, and it was built in the 1400s. When you walk into it, you have this very elaborate, beautiful stonework. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but what makes this so unique is the spiraling columns. So if you look at the columns, they kind of rotate, spiral up, and then when they get to the roof, it kind of flowers out into the rib vaults. And then if you look in between the rib vaults, it's cut stone. So it's no longer like this kind of rough rubble infill. They actually were able to solve the layout for every single stone. And so it's impressive. It's all this curved stonework and all this templates that they would have had to solve. Yeah. And then I'll probably fly through a couple of these, but so there's another type of vault or like this dome kind of structure that I wanted to show you. And it's interesting how they supported the dome. But here it is. So another church, ancient medieval church, and you can see again here you got these squinches that hold up the circular dome on a square base. But to add additional support to the dome, they would put in all these different arches going along the dome. So they would slice the dome and then put an arch there, and slice the dome there and put an arch here. And they do a series of these. And oftentimes, right in the center, you have a little cupola, like another little dome on top of that. Yeah. So here's a close-up view of that. And I have another example. Here's another example of this other, again, ancient church, 1200s, and then again with that type of support system or structure with the squinches. and all these different ways of slicing up that dough. My favorite one of these is in Spain, and it's there's that same one. It's this one here, and built in the 1300s. So there it is. But what makes this one so unique in comparison to the other ones is I'll show you a close-up view of this area. There. So if you look at the stones, all those arches and where they come together, right here, you have these stones with like a clasp. Whereas all the other examples, they were just kind of smoothed out. Whereas these ones, they have like a bird's mouth that captures that stone above. And this was done in the 1300s. So I think it's one of those things where you had probably the client with the money, you had some time, and you had the skill that enabled this to happen. And they're little rarities, but this is an amazing example of the ability, the skill, and the knowledge of the mason at the time to figure this out. Okay, so I'll give them a couple examples of these vaults, and maybe we can take a break. Yeah. Okay, so here's some of these fan vaults. So out of these like rib vaults and all these different types of vaults, another of this elaborate way of building space is through fan vaults. This is the best example of a fan vault. It's not the oldest, but it's one of the best examples. And a fan vault, what is a fan vault? It's an arch that's rotated or pivots along the pillar. And so that's why you have a circular top. And the problem with fan vaults, in this instance specifically, is, well, see the space in here between the fan vaults? You have to fill it somehow. And so they would often fill it in with all these other tracery work. And it's somewhat domed as well. It's like it's curved, it's not flat. The oldest example of a fan vault is in here in the UK, so in the 1100s, 1200s. And you can see it's a mixture of this like rib vault and groin vaults and all these other vaulting things. But there's the fan vault. You can see it. There's a bunch of those arches that's pivoted around this one stone. And what's pretty fascinating about this example is that this pendant, so all of this is one big stone. So you can see the joint here, right there, and you can see a layer of joints right there. So you probably had, maybe not the master mason himself, but you probably had like the top apprentice or the top journeyman do that one piece. There's a couple, you can see there's a series of those like pendants. But it's really impressive to see the accuracy that they were able to achieve. Okay, and then out of these other types of vaults, there's all these organic ones. Like this is just a kind of a freak show of an example of vaults, but this is in the Czech Republic, in Vladislav Hall in the Prague Castle. Again, I think built in the 1400s, but it was this architect that designed this organic-looking, almost like Art Nouveau type of structure. And this is an older photo that it used to be painted, so it probably looked really nice. But here it is, a kind of real view of it. And this, it's a couple, I don't know, it's like 50 meters long by 15 meters wide or something. It's got some really impressive sizes. But they used to joust, jousting with like horses, and they would try to knock each other off. Well, they would joust in this area. And the stairs leading up to the hall were very shallow and wide for the horses to walk up. So I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah. So there's there you can see the chandelier hanging down. And if you were to go right under the chandelier and look up, or like lay down and look up, that's what you would see. You would see this really, really fascinating vault. Okay, so I'll wrap this section up. We'll take maybe a 5 or 10 minute break, and then we'll come back. Yeah. Okay. So all of this knowledge, what I'm ultimately showing here is that this stuff is what we use, or what we were able to develop and create these cathedrals. This is the Strasbourg Cathedral. here's a Chateau de Chenonceau, France. This is the French Renaissance period. But if anyone's ever interested in architectural history, this man, Philippe Delorme, kind of the grandfather of French Renaissance, has an interesting story. He apprenticed as a mason under his dad, who was a master mason. And Philippe Delorme came up through the ranks of the trade, became an architect, and then published 2 books about architecture. The first one was about different styles of architecture, but the second one was all about stereotomy. It was all about how do we use the material and cut it and solve for it. So, anyways, this is the Wells Cathedral. We've seen the tracing floor. The Gloucester Cathedral, we've seen the tracing floor for that one as well. And then, this is, well, I'll wrap it up with this. So what I've shown so far, all these kind of big, cinematic structures, but they don't always have to be that way. You can use smaller pieces as well. So here's an example in Austria. This is the Eggenberg Palace, built in the 1400s. It's a set of stairs. It's 2 revolving staircases that come together at each floor. Okay, that's generally what it is. So there's a shot of it there. What makes it interesting is that there's no central column. So there's no column in the center. It's been removed, and it's a void. This here is the handrail. So you want to walk up and down probably sober. Either way. And there's a photo from underneath, kind of with a fisheye lens. So what I see here is you're taking this solid material, in this case stone, and you're making it look like Play-Doh. You can just completely do whatever you want with it. And I think there's something into it, something empowering about it. All right, so we'll take a break. Yeah, so it's, I think, 2 o'clock. So if we say we come back at 2:05, we got 5 minutes, or what is it now? It's 2:10? Okay, so 2:15? Yeah, okay, 2:15 to come back. Okay.
I remember you want to smoke something. I think you'll find something that is my
Yeah, it's like such
Maximum
I didn't have anybody, so I have to take one piece from there. It's all there. If you have any comments, just check me. Hey, let's take a cup of coffee or something. Okay, I sent you some time next week maybe. No problem.
But it's now you start to show. Same stuff.
It's more like the curves. I'm okay to have like a straight line project and so, but how is the curve? Because the top view, if you make the elevation, it's a circle, but how can you project heat, let's say, and then it creates not then a circle, no, a straight line, it makes like, and how do you do that?
Yeah, you plot it out. So it's by like making a.
Okay, depending on the step you choose.
Yeah, well, ultimately when you deal with curves, like all those examples of curves, you slice it horizontally. And you make a bunch of slices.
Okay.
And then you basically plot every little point. And the more slices you have, the more accurate. Exactly, yeah. So it's going
in that
this.
case, you can also lay your lines of stones between the bolts.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Well, in those ones, they would create a net. They would unfold it.
And then it's
And then they have their templates.
but it's wood and it comes with some twist or cracks, then it's I think it's tricky. If you stone, then it's stable.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe.
Come on.
I was just looking for my colleagues.
Oh, okay.
It's very interesting. It's clever to stay here. It's very interesting. You were here.
Katrin,
We were.
I think it's 2019.
In Germany.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go back.
Kan det här vara så enkelt?
Kun se nyt lähetään minne puolelle takkaa? Joo, on veisissä syömässä toisessa. Okei.
Tulemme takaisin. Kautasimme monet.
Mäsä.
Okay, so I'll start. The people come in. Okay, so this portion, the end, I have to go through it fast. So you might get a seizure if you look at the screen too long. I'll be flickering really quickly. I want to show you the three cultures that still practice and maintain this knowledge. That's the French, the Germans, and the Japanese. And that doesn't mean that other cultures and nations don't use it. They certainly do. But those are the three main ones that have developed a whole kind of identity surrounding this knowledge. Okay. And then I'll try to wrap it up with a couple examples of why you use your hands. I got to do this in like 12 minutes. Okay, so the first group that I will show you are the Japanese. So in Japan, there is a section of carpentry, or a portion of this woodworking category. We would consider timber framing, or the Japanese would consider temple builders. Miyadeku. And carpenters use this knowledge of stereotomy to build and design these structures, these curved eave lines and these pagodas and these big bracketing systems that they have. But the French, the Germans, and the Japanese, they have a word specific for stereotomy as it's used by carpenters. And for the Japanese, it's called kikujutsu. Kikujutsu. So if you ever look that up, that's the set of that knowledge. So kikujutsu is this, it's the exact same thing that we've seen earlier where we have, there's your drawing on the floor, and you're drawing things out full size or scale. This gentleman here, his name is Takayo Mochida, and he is a living national treasure in Japan. So the Japanese government, they've kind of formed this organization that they give out this title to people in Japan who have a profound knowledge of a certain cultural skills. So in this case, Mr. Takayo, he's a living national treasure for his knowledge in kikujutsu. But uniquely, he has it twice. He has it for the old version and the modern version of kikujutsu. So it's really interesting. And he gets a certain amount of funding from the government to put on courses and to train the younger generation, which I think is a wonderful thing. I mean, if he dies, it's gone, right? So, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to fly through these because these are examples and photos of these drawings, uniquely Japanese, and the drawings are very different. Through these drawings, they build these models. These are a series of educational sessions that you have to go to if you want to work on these listed, graded cultural, historical monuments. So once the model is done, they get heavily critiqued, they get looked at. Have we done it right? Are there certain portions respected? Are the joinery? Does the joinery look good? And all of that, all of this layout is solved with this drawing. So you can see all the lines that are drawn on the piece. That's all done on the ground and then put on then raised and assembled. The Japanese, from what I understand, they have a tradition that for you to become a master of carpentry, your layout is so good that you don't have to go to site, and then it gets erected with no problems, and then you have your title. So I just want to show you some of the joinery that they use and how accurate they are. What makes this unique? So here's a joint. I'll slide back a couple, but the joint is between this piece here, this hip, and the king post, and you can see that the through tenon is sticking out there. Well, that's the close-up shot. I want to show you this. So there it is. So on the other side of the post is the hip, and that hip comes up, goes into the king post with this tenon that sticks out, and then a peg, a square peg. But you can see the layout. Notice how the peg itself is also rotated. It's not plumb vertical. And how tight everything is. But let me point something out here. So see this line here and that line? You can kind of see it continues, and you can barely make it out, but there it is there. Well, that line is done on the drawing, or through the drawing. It's laid out on the piece. And when those two lines, when they're coming together, when you're assembling, as soon as they come up and they meet together, then you stop. You stop putting it together. Like that's at the right height. It's a height measurement or reference. And so it's impressive to see how accurate and precise the joinery is, but also the fact that those lines line up. It's one thing because you can keep kind of curve cutting and fitting until it hits perfectly, but then those lines will no longer line up, right? So it's really impressive to see the accuracy. All right, so this knowledge, kikujutsu, is what enables them to build these sorts of structures. And this is that kind of what we think of these big, curved eaves. So there's some of these bracketing systems that support these really big overhangs. And all of that is done, drawn out full size on the floor. And through their educational system, going to school and learning this in turn then helps them restore and respect and honor these traditions that have been passed down through hundreds or thousands of years. Kikujutsu, so two students and I had this wonderful opportunity to go and put on a couple pieces in a museum in Japan, in Kobe, and it's the Takanaka Carpentry Tools Museum. And so two students and I, Luke and Jeremy, we kind of hung around the museum for a couple of days, met the curator, and we toured around. And the curator was telling us about the history of Kikujutsu, how it was introduced from mainland China in 458 when Buddhist carpenters came along. So, a little bit of history. So there's a couple of modern examples of this type of timber framing. I noticed the pocket screws. I always point it out because I love it. See all the little holes? Those are screws. So they're not like, fixated on having only joinery. They use screws and other fasteners and stuff too. So there's some of that architecture. All right, the Germans. So in Germany, if you're a carpenter, you're a Zimmermann, and they still have this tradition of dressing up that way. So if you ever see a carpenter like this, pick them up. They're often hitchhiking around, and that's how they get around. But in Germany, they have this knowledge, and they call it Stiftung. And Stiftung is what they use in part, again, like the Japanese, through their educational system that enables them to get this level of certification, your Meisterbrief, and then now you can own and operate your own business, take on apprentices, but there's the Germans laying out exactly like the Japanese and the French, full size, extrapolating that information from the drawing onto the timber. And they actually, all these countries have this skills competition, if you're familiar with that. And this is what you use. They use stereotomy. So there's some examples of their structures. And this is probably what everyone feels like at some point when you're learning it. I felt like this for years. You're just like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I have no idea. And it's because it's hard, because you're using your hands, and it's a very long, your brain is very primitive. We're not, part of a lot of ways, we're not meant to have this technology that's just so fast and rapid. Our brains are very slow. So that's why we feel this way when we're first learning. But I think I mentioned that during the course to somebody once, because he was feeling frustrated. Everyone feels that way. It's just inevitable that you have to get that. But yeah, and so like the Japanese, the Germans learn this knowledge, and that helps them maintain their kind of cultural, architectural landscape. So when you go to Germany and they have this famous road, the timber frame road, that goes from the north to the south, and there's along this road, there's just thousands of these half-timbered homes. And they're all maintained and kept up, due in part, not to only Stiftung, but through this ability of passing on knowledge. Okay, now the French. So the Japanese, the Germans, and the French. And then within France, you have this certain group, a specific group called les Compagnons du Devoir. This is what I did when I was in France for several years. And it's a group of carpenters, well, not just carpenters, but other trades, that get together, and they travel, you do a tour de France, and you work and live in different areas of France for many years, and all while you're learning what the French call l'art du trait. L'art du trait is stereotomy as it's used by French carpenters. And l'art du trait is what has been listed by UNESCO onto the list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. So it's because of this knowledge the French are able to maintain their cultural, architectural landscape. And so here's these compagnons, when they want to challenge to become a fully inducted member, now you have the title of compagnon, you have to present a masterpiece. And it's hundreds and hundreds or even thousands of hours of work that goes into these things. And so there's some examples. And then you get a cane, you get a sash, you get a beating. There's examples of these models. Trestle. And so what makes the French unique, interestingly, the French, due in part from the compagnons and all these other traditions, but the French have really took this knowledge and pushed it far. And so the French have a really thorough, deep understanding of stereotomy. Not saying that the Japanese and the Germans don't, or other countries don't, but you won't find anything else in the world like you do in France. It's really, really unique because of their understanding of it. So they're able to develop very unique types of designs one of which is this thing called a guitard. And there's many types of other things too, but this is just one such example, where it's a very elaborate dormer with all these three-dimensionally curved pieces of wood, and hundreds or thousands of hours are poured into one little thing. So there's some examples. But uniquely French, and even more uniquely compagnons. And again, it's not to say that not compagnons have produced them, they certainly have, but the majority of them are produced by compagnons. This is my favorite one. It's kind of worn out. It says, Dieu protège les arts, written inside, God protect the arts. Well, it's kind of worn out. It's a nice touch. All right, so same thing, like the French, like the Germans and the Japanese, through this knowledge, the French are able to maintain this architectural landscape. Another example of this type of building, the thing that the French do is these twisted spires. So on top of the cathedral, you have this spire. Sometimes they twist. Historically, maybe by accident, or what you're witnessing is maybe a structural failure of the spire, but as time goes on, they started to do it on purpose. So here's an example of one on a compagnon's shop. So there's the framing. This is on the Guild House in the city of Nantes. This is on your tour de France, you live in different areas, and this is in the city of Nantes. So as a carpenter, you all live together in the same house. You eat together, you study together, you shower together, you sleep together. You just do everything together as a group. It's like a fraternity thing, Yeah. So here's another example of a restored twisted spire. So the spire was originally twisted in the 1300s, maybe a failure, but they restored it recently and they restored it twisted. Yeah. Okay, so here's another masterpiece of one of the first twisted spires in a book in the 1700s. But I'm going to link this project here. So, like I was saying earlier, like a lot of this knowledge is kept alive, and they're able to keep their architecture and their cultural landscape, or their architectural cultural landscape alive. So when you go to France and you see all these wonderful monuments, well, do a part two of this knowledge that enables them to do that. So there's a spire that's being built back in the day, and so here's some modern or fairly modern masterpieces of the spire, reconstructions of the spire. So the compagnons have a vast amount of knowledge of this church specifically, but of other ones, of course. So these are scaled down models of the spire. So there's the three compagnons on the left, on the right, excuse me, and their advisor on the left. They present this, and there's some examples of the spire being reconstructed. Okay, so then, yeah. Okay, and then I'll try to wrap that up here soon. So one of the things that this is what I was saying about what makes France so unique is only in France can you find these grand masterpieces. It's really that's something that kind of blows kind of everything else out. And due to complexity, to size, to how long it took, and the number of hours it took, it's truly incredible. And so this is a grand masterpiece that if you go to Paris, it's open to the public. You just have to ask. You can go and see it. And it's, 5 meters tall, no, maybe more, 7 meters tall. And it's just, I think this one specifically, so there's another shot of it. It's so intricate and detailed. It looks, well, so here it is. When I first moved to France, and when I saw this, I visited this a tiny little museum. And I looked at it, and I'm like, yeah, as an American, this is my perspective. I'm like, well, we can do that too. There's nothing special about this. I can build things with chopsticks and, glue sticks and put them together. And because I had no idea what I was looking at. And the way I can describe it to you is if you were to go back in time and take like a Neanderthal or like a primitive person, and then fast forward them into today, and you can watch Elon Musk's rocket go off into Mars, this person would have no idea what they're looking at, right? It would be like, this is the work of the gods, probably. Or for me, I would be like, well, cool, where's my beard? But don't know. I have no context. And that's how I felt when I looked at these things. So you just have no context. And so the one that I'm standing next to, just to give you an idea, that project has been ongoing for over 100 years. It started in the 1840s, and it wasn't completed until after World War II. And it's not to say that they were continuously every single day working on it, but because of the war, they stopped, they protected it, but it's something that's been for there's like hundreds of thousands of hours into it, millions and millions of dollars put into this thing. So it's really unique. So there's another example of that in another museum. Okay, so I'm going to try to wrap this up here. So going back to like the importance of doing it by hand is you're really working your brain, you're forcing your brain to think. And there's another one of these books that I read when I got back from France. I was very curious about the technology and all that sort of stuff. It's called The Glass Cage, Automation and Us. The author's name is Nicholas Carr, and he is a neuroscientist that's studying the brain. And he has a new type of research called embodied cognition. And so he explains that the scientists have found that the workings of the brain and body are interwoven to a degree far beyond what we assume. The biological processes that constitute thinking emerge not just from your brain, from the neural computation in the skull, but in fact actions and sensory perceptions from the entire body. So, quote, he gives the retina dry as an example and says it isn't a passive sensor sending raw data to the brain, as we once thought. It actively shapes what we see. The eye has smarts of its own. Okay. So he goes on to say that the idea that our understanding of our surrounding is formed not only in our brains, but throughout our whole body. It's consequential to our relationship with our tools. So Carr explains that our bodies and brain are quick to bring tools and other artifacts into our thought processes, to treat things neurologically as parts of ourselves. So if you walk with a cane or work with a hammer or fight with a sword, your brain will incorporate the tools into its neuronal map of your body. And so, in short, as a carpenter, at some point you almost feel like a chisel is an extension of your body. It's like it's almost a part of you. Well, it actually becomes a part of you. Your brain is processing it and thinking that that is actually a part of your body. So there's more to it. And again, that's why I think using your hands is so important. All right, so I'm just going to fly through this, and then I'll wrap it up here. All right, so here. This is one of my students, actually. My students have this quote. It says, if you can't picture it in your mind, how can you bring it to life? So both the study of stereotomy and hand drafting can physically change one's brain to think and see differently. Neuroplasticity, that's like a new term everyone likes to say, but when you're introducing these new things, your brain is actually forming, its physical shape is changing, and so when you're bringing this knowledge in, you're able to think differently. Okay, so this is my two pieces of evidence to show you why using your hands is important. The first one is a study that was done back in the US about handwritten notes versus typed. And what, studied research students at different subjects of, going to school and university, and they wanted to research the difference between taking notes by hand or with a computer. And what they discovered, of course, you get the message, but what they discovered was that if you take notes on the computer, you can type as fast as the professor is lecturing, pretty much. And so all you're doing is you're just kind of copying the professor. So you have a lot of notes, and when you go back home, you have a lot of stuff to reference to. But in fact, you don't recall everything that the professor was talking about. Whereas when you go and write by hand, you have to actually think of what the professor is saying, because he can't write as quick. And you have to okay, what's the concepts, what's the ideas, and you make point-form notes. It's really hard. But as you're taking notes, as you're writing individual letters, more of your body is engaged in the thinking process. So more of it's ingrained into your brain. All right, so I'll wrap it up with this. Oh, I don't have any. Is there internet? I hope there is. See if this works. Perfect. Good old YouTube. We'll finish this off with YouTube. Yeah, I'm trying. All right. Okay, so I'm going to give you just some background context. Yeah, get out of here. that. Okay, so this is it's an interview from the 1980s, so it's kind of funny and clunky and cheesy, but it's with the content that matters. So it's an interview between a psychologist and this guy. He talks about the hand, just the anatomy of the hand and the importance of it. And how the hand, the physiological part of our body has developed culture, language, tools, and all these other things. So it's 4 minutes, and then that's it.
Good evening, I'm Jim Lara. On the news doc tonight, the David Gergen dialogue on the human hand and some perspective on the year 1998. David Gergen, editor-at-large of U.S. News and World Report, engages Frank Wilson, a neurologist and author of The Hand, How Its Use Shapes the Brain, Language, and Human Culture.
Dr. Wilson, as a neurologist, tell us, how does the hand influence how the brain works?
The human hand, starting about 3 million years ago, began to change very subtly. As Darwin observed, animals that were walking around on 4 limbs could stand up, and the hands then became free to do other things. And there were some subtle anatomic changes in the hand that made it work in a way that really changed the survival aspects of our ancestors once they got on the ground.
And then it began to interact with the brain. The hand began changing the brain, in effect.
Well, the hand and the brain really grew up together over some millions of years. And the result of that was that an enormous part of the control apparatus of the human brain is now really specialized for skilled use of the hands. It's really the crux of what then becomes an issue, I think, in human development, because you can compress the anthropology story in such a way that you can ask the question about us as individual human beings. What is it about the hand that accounts for the way we as individuals develop? And that's another very interesting story.
Well, I'd like to pursue that because one of the main themes of your book is that the hand traditionally has been very important to human education of an individual, and increasingly we believe in modern education we're ignoring the importance of manual dexterity and manual learning.
And what's been missing in the story is that particularly in early childhood, the experience that begins around the age of 1, when a child begins to be able to control individual finger movements, the child gets up off its bottom, starts walking around and exploring the world, and actually begins using words for the first time. What we really think of as the beginning of human thought and human individuality is really tied up with these chronologically very, very tightly controlled events that all children go through. Now, once children get into school, the sort of learning machine that was given to us by biology is sort of preempted by a culture that says, well, we would like our sons and daughters to go to Harvard, and we would like them to be computer scientists, and we would like them to be aeronautical engineers. So we'll now take that over, and we will fill the child with the information that the child needs. Unfortunately, that does violence psychologically to the child, and it also, unfortunately, divorces the child from the physical world at a time when that child has to know what the world really is about. It's a world that you can't really quite get through a computer. You really get it better outside, throwing snowballs and lead balls and playing with cats and animals and toys and making things up.
And that actually working with those kind of things and working with your hands with it actually teaches you more and teaches you other things that you don't learn if it's all cognitive.
Well, you can't really separate what's in the mind from what's in the body. Knowledge really is the whole behavior of the whole organism. And if the mistake that we've made, I think, isn't focusing on education, it's thinking that you can educate the mind by itself. So we're coming to the edge of, I think, a discovery about education, which is that you can't really skip this experience. It's important for children to have hands-on experience when they're young.
So parents ought to allow their children to have that satisfactory curiosity, working with their hands, working inside an automobile, working with other things like that.
I mean, there are any number of experiences that kids ought to have, but you can't rush that. Biology took a long time to get us this gift that we have, this marriage of hand and mind.
Dr. Frank Wilson, thank you.
David, thank you. I really appreciate it.
There you go. So just to further provide proof that you can't, like as you said, you can't separate learning just, all cognitive. You have to incorporate your whole body. So, anyway, there it is. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. This is the art and science of stereotomy. So I'm afraid we don't have enough time for questions, but you can meet Patrick during the coffee box after the next or today's last presentations. So thank you.
Thank you.
They help you to go without microphone. So now today's last presentations, or one presentation. Two Finns who joined us in the last minute, I can say. Jarmo Hiltunen, Timo Arhanemi. Sorry. And please come closer, I give you my mic. And 3D modeling, log structures, traditional meets digital tools.
Siruttavat eliniimiset sinulle. Onko 2 minuuttia? 2 minuuttia. Mä viistän. Lisätä kohdalla. Ei kauan. Brain science, it's something really turns you on. Yeah. Amazing experiences in France. Really transformative experiences. So write a book, do a video, because you are not forever in this life. So please, do the short lectures for attention for 5 minutes. For 5 minutes later. Please. Okay, thank you. Ronnie.
Do you hear me? Yes. Okay, my name is Jarmo Hiltunen. I'm from Finland, and actually I decided last week that I'm going to participate here. What do you know? Now I'm here with you guys. Today our team is about 3D modeling and combining it with block structures. It's like a traditional way to build and using new tools and methods to produce something interesting. A few words of my background. I've been a block builder a long time, and maybe some 10 years ago I found out there are no actually very good block construction books available. Of course there are few, but about books that tell how you block builders build block notches and all kind of structures. And I wanted to write a book like 2015 and so on. And it was quite complicated because I first realized it's very difficult to explain how you make, for example, dotted knots or any kind of knots. It has so many paces. You can't actually take pictures of every pace, how you cut the locks. And making drawings is difficult because when you draw some picture and you want to change something, it doesn't work. Okay, and this is the background story, and actually my third profession is nowadays more or less, I'm a 3D designer. And in my book that came like last year, it like combines everything I've been doing. I put this like a circulating, it's like it's about Finnish smoke sauna. It's like a builders, explaining builders how to build a sauna. And nowadays it's my 7th book, and I think I couldn't do books anymore differently because I need to illustrate some things that are very difficult to take pictures and draw. And this technology, 3D technology, helps a lot to explain things. Okay. These are my very first pictures I made for my first book. It was like 2015, but they are very simple models trying to explain. This is like a left picture, it's like a dovetail notch, and I'm trying to explain how do you make the long groove. It's like you cut the notch, and then you have like sideways cuts here and make some shorter cuts and take the pieces out of the axe, use axe. And trying to take a picture about this or make it drawing, it's complicated, but this 3D technology back then helped me to start making books. And same thing here, the right side is explaining, it's like a diamond saddle notch. It's like how do you make the drawings for the notch type before you cut it. It's like a picture, and of course there's an explanation what all the lines and the dots and everything like this means. But I found out this technology, 3D technology, is a very good way to explain things like that. Okay, then the story continues, and I found out it's like the same technology can do much more than just simple instruction. And this is a very old picture, like 10 years ago, but it's like the possibilities to use this technology for a block builder and to help and illustrate things, they are almost limitless. And before we go forward, I try to explain how I understand 3D modeling and what it is. This is like an official explanation. You are trying to create a mathematical representation of 3D object or shape. For example, the glass, if you look at this glass and we want to make a 3D model of this, we look at it has like shapes and measures and material, and the light comes in a different direction. And we can make glass, if we want to make a different kind of glass, we can make the model first and then try to find out what kind of glass we need. And the same thing goes with, we are planning new buildings. And since I've been writing books and nowadays I've been expanding this world of 3D for more building planning. And as I say, my background is block builder. I have no architectural training or no engineer training, and it explains many things, how I do things because of my background. It's like when I do a model with computer, it's exactly the same thing that I built a log house. It's like doing digital version. It's like the one-to-one version. Okay, I understand architects and engineers and everybody is nowadays doing something called building information model, BIM. And it's like this is quite new thing for me, but as a log builder I understand I have used many elements from this world that professional architects and everybody use. And the main theme we are today focusing is the visualization. It's like we take a very small piece from this building information model world, and it's already huge, but we can take many elements from this way of planning things. As I understand, the main idea in BIM is if you start to build something or design something, you make a 3D model first, like any building, and you add some information to this model, and people can, see the model and they make changes. And see, the 3D model is like the center of everything, and it's like a same thing. But where I see things, I can take many elements besides visualization, like design and planning, and it's amazing that you actually build a house or a smoke sauna, anything, and you see how it actually looks, and you can make changes to it with the customer and say the same model, and the customer sees what the changes are, and it's much easier to make the changes straight to that digital version than the real building. Of course, in the real BIM world, there are engineers, designers, architects, but you can have a sawmill operator as your collaboration partner. And that's like the last month, I was explaining sawmill operator how to cut the logs and what kind of logs we need our next project. And I saw a 3D model and some measures, and he immediately understood what we are looking for. And we go deeper to the 3D world. It's like if you can combine everything in this building information model, it surely saves time, and it's a very interesting project, a very interesting approach, but very new thing for me. And is Ivar here? It's like okay, but there are many people here that are more familiar with this process, and I think this is something we should think about, how we could make this very complicated process for more use for log builders. It is something I'm very interested in doing some research with that next. Okay. Yes. Okay. Now we're getting to the actual interesting part of our lecture is one visualization project. Here's a first sketch of like a stylized version, this experimental kind of vault. And all the credits, this original idea and all the technical things go to my friend Timo Aroheinilä, who has been thinking how we build a completely new kind of log structure, like a vault. Normally you just stack logs on each other, but maybe this new kind of thing would work. And this is something very interesting, but we started this project making this model first to better understand all the difficulties and challenges to actually build something like this. And actually, as a log builder, you first go to the forest and get the logs you need. And we did the same thing. We went to log yard and take pictures of actual lock surfaces. These are from Timo's lock yard, like the two upper ones are side of locks, textures, and the light one in the middle is like the upper part of the lock. And lower you have lock ends, different patterns, actual pictures. And in this project we have maybe 10, 12 picture sides, like textures, and maybe same amount of lock ends as building material. And after you have building material, like in normal lock building, you first got to have locks, but in this digital way to build, we have pictures of locks. And the next thing is to do is, we were thinking about what kind of locks we need. And as I remember, it was like 12 meters long side cut locks that are something like 200, 250 millimeters thick. And as you can see and understand, these kind of locks have all kind of forms and bumps and everything. And in this model, this very basic model was the first lock for the digital project. And making model for anything, it's like it's somewhat complicated, because if you can make as complicated model of anything as you want, but if you add more details and surfaces and all kind of stuff to the lock, the model gets heavier all the time. And when it gets heavier, you need better computers and everything to use this model. And when you stack this model together, you have so heavy model that actually any computer can. You need very powerful computers that work with these models. The trick is to make as simple model as possible, because they are much easier to work with that, and they're lighter. Of course, when we make a model of lock, we can go as deep as we want to the wood structure, model every crack and everything, every stick that is pointing for the lock, but sometimes it's not needed. And this is what we got. The image a little shrink, but at the end of the lock harvesting project, we have like a set of locks we needed. They're actually wider, but this is like compressing it. Actually, these are the building materials we are planning with Timo to build the actual boat, digital building materials. All kind of locks, they have look different, and the side texture is a little different and positive in other side of the lock to make some variation. But if you use just a few locks, the end result looks like it's made with computer. But when you add more variation, the end result is much closer to the idea of photorealistic image. That sometimes is the main idea, to make a model that looks as real as possible. And the best feedback is when you have modeled something. For example, I made a model where the sauna is next to the lake. And someone asked, it's like rocks and everything, and someone asked, how was it possible to build the sauna so close to the water? And it made my day, because I knew he didn't understand it wasn't real. Yeah. Yes. Okay, now we have the locks for the bolt model. And next thing we do is like do the positioning part, like with actual lock building. You have a set of locks. We have like about 30 long locks here, and we are placing the locks on top of the circle. That works as a guide for the structure. And we have these blue parts there that help to adjust the lock direction of the model. And here we have put the wider butts facing towards, and smaller parts of the lock, like tips, at the other end, and it gives that locks that form that we are looking for, and it's like an opening when you see it. And this was maybe the most difficult part, like the digital locks were quite different shape, and placing them together was quite hard, but you know, in digital world you can change the locks, make them thicker and make them longer and adjust them a little, because we are talking about visualization here, and it doesn't matter if we change the original locks a little. Yes. And after this, when the mold model was finished, we continue different sketching, finding different solutions for the walls and what other parts you can add to the model. And actually, you can continue this work as much as possible. You can add parts and doors and windows and everything. But you can try it, what seems to work well. And if something doesn't work, you can take the front wall away and try something else. And it's like no big deal. And it's like it was a very interesting part when the actual mold was built. Okay. Okay. This was the very short modeling part of this our part. And if you want to ask any questions, we can do it later or now, but maybe the next part is very interesting because we are now in the phase we have the model ready, and we have done the model and do different variations, and now we have been thinking how you actually build this model. That is just a digital version. And we have to think about how you actually build this. It's like my part in this project, I was just doing the visualization, and my friend Timo has been doing a lot of work how to actually build something like this. And Timo, please, it's maybe more easier than Timo explains how this works.
Okay. Thank you, Jarmo. Never go anywhere without your Bible. My Bible is here. It's. I hope you have all read this book. If you haven't, you should buy one. Okay. And we can. This is my book. This is that's the Old Testament, and that's the New Testament. So I'm running a block building company in southern Finland, in Archipelago in Naantali. And I've been working as a professional block builder now for around 15 years or something. And my company is producing living houses and villas for customers with demanding taste. And can you show the first picture from my set, please? Now I have crafted 57 block buildings. And I feel that I'm already quite home with them, and I'm getting a bit bored with just building saunas. Although first I thought that building sauna is the most magnificent thing a crafter can do. So, this idea, probably inspired from several different sources, came to me that I should start making it more natural art, so that the shape of the forest, the natural shape of the trunk of the tree is the element for the architecture. So instead of laying the tops and butts to different directions each time on a singular wall, I decided that we could start creating new architecture with pointing all the butts to the same direction. And this is the most simple idea of how to do the roof then. So, when you see this soon, you will see it in action. I have made already one with this idea. You will find out that not breaking the triangular, the gable, kind of, the gable of the building or the wall with this horizontal line makes it much more natural. Can you show us the next, please? So you could, I was just making these sketches, so you could also make something like this. I haven't tried this one. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it would work. It definitely would. I don't know if anyone wants to have anything like it. Well, I made sketches. Can you show the next one, please? So, yeah, here I made this to Naantali, very close to where our company is located. So it's not that simple, like the floor plan is not just for corners, etc. But it's a commercial building. And the roof is like pointing to the sea, to that direction. And then all the walls are like slowly getting bigger. So the back wall I have had to use the much smaller in diameter, a bit smaller diameter wood, because the amount of the rounds that go around the building is the same on the wall that is taller also. So that's the idea. Can you show the next one? Then I was thinking, it's boring to just make straight walls like this. Okay, I can twist them like that, but I want to start arcing them. So I made just this, I got this idea, so I took the chainsaw, I just made a sketch. It was like most comfortable way for me to make a sketch like this. So this double vault is here, but then I was thinking how to make it actually in practice, and I understood it's actually not that easy, because how the shrinkage is and how the settling goes, that point would be terrible to make so that if after settling it would still be tight. And then I got, go on, I got in contact with Jarmo, and we got this project. I started to make this book, because I noticed already at that point, if I ever want to actually make these kind of buildings, if I want to make real vaults of the vlogs, I need to illustrate it. It's so rare stuff nowadays. It has always been rare with logs to make vaults, that I need to try to find people that would somehow get so excited somehow. So that's my way. Okay, I made a book. There it is. It's 1 year ago we got it out, and it's in Finnish, unfortunately, but it has a lot of pictures. Maybe someday I'm actually planning to make an English version, but at the moment I'm looking for a translator for it, since I don't want to use my time in just translating. Okay, then I'm supposed to talk about the actual problems in the structure. So I would like to ask you as the audience, what comes to your mind? Okay, so, see, I have this book, and in this book, in page 135, whoever wants to see, is there someone who is very interested, please, in the vaults? Here you go. So in page 135, there's a Sicilian granary, still exists. The book doesn't tell from which century or etc. it is. It's a nice vault, and the top of the vault is out of boards that are in 2 layers, so that the settling can come like this from the top. It's kind of, the vault is not total, but when the logs shrink, it can squeeze from the top. But I didn't like the idea in that book, because then Then if it's a big building, and if it's not in Sicily, if it's in Finland, for example, there's a lot of snow, so the vault should bear something. That kind of vault that is kind of like left unfinished and just covered with some boards from the top is not bearing any weight or enough weight, snow weight, from the middle of the vault where the end walls are not existing. So I wanted to have the vault full. So it means that, okay, now I then got another great idea. Okay, let's make the ends also like this sun symbol. But there was other type of sketch also that they are going this way. So it's possible, but this model I couldn't make it so that it would be like in normal use. So we decided to put it in a like exhibition hall. It's like some world exhibition or something. That's the idea of it. So please, do you have questions? How to make one of these, or what's the problem in it? Yoshi, go ahead.
So you use graph for that, or dry?
Dry wood would be much better. The shrinkage is smaller.
I'm thinking about that.
So you can see the detail how I was thinking to make this model is how the end wall logs stay in place compared, like, that they don't start sliding and they hold the arc. So is to take the long groove off from every second piece and then make this kind of hidden teeth structure in the groove. So instead of just using pads, which don't really give good support, I got an idea of this kind of way. And I used actually this structure in one villa or lodge in Lapland a year ago, and in its ridge pole, 3 parts ridge pole, and it was made with this technique. What is the next picture? Yeah, so that was the book I came out with, and now all what I want, these are the means towards it. So just go ahead, sketch, find customers, give me a job, I want to do it. This is a 3D model, we have done it, Jarmo has done it. He has cut this from logs that you notice they are not straight. I said, no, let's not make this too easy to Jarmo. Let's put even the logs arcing a bit. Let's not make this too easy. And he managed to cut them.
Who would like to try to build something? Raise your hand. Okay, one.
I have a question.
Yes?
Is the size of the long model exactly the size as in the real building? Or is it just for illustration?
Yes.
You mean digital version? Of course, they are, of course you have to keep the size real because if you don't have it, it's like the messes the perspective and everything.
Yeah, so the size of the logs is 300 millimeters of thickness, and the butts are 50, I think 55 or something, 50, and the tops are around 40 centimeters. And that's what you can find. So I wanted to have a model that you can make.
Then you mean every dog to 55, the bots?
No, they change. They have different sizes.
Yes.
Yes, they are all different sizes and they have different shapes. They're not straight. And the wedginess is different.
Yes, I made this confession that when I made this model, I made some adjustments because some logs didn't fit that well, but you can move some parts. Yeah, but it's in the real world, it's quite a challenge to try to join all the logs together. It's like, I think about the setting and how they move. It's like I don't have enough imagination. Maybe you guys have, at least one. Yes.
Any more? Yeah, please.
I don't see on the outside of the arc, I don't see any like ends of the end wall logs. So how do you tie the end wall to the arc?
Yeah. So there is a channel. There is no picture where it is. How about the previous picture? Not even in that one. Oh, there you can see. There's a channel where the dovetails go.
But it's not a full dovetail.
No, it's cut like to half or 1/3 or 2/5 or something like that, I would suppose. Yeah. So it's possible to make with some jigs. It's possible to make. But first we need a customer. So it's so expensive to make that we decided to do it with a computer first.
We all need expensive hobbies.
Yep.
Can you make a model of it?
Pardon?
Can you make a scaled model of it? That's not as costly?
Oh, small one.
Yeah.
Oh, it's possible, but this is in real size. Do you want to show further and continue with your, because this question is leading to show more.
Now we're getting back to the digital size of the making the model. We continue with the technical size, but actually when the model is ready, and this time Timo's vault is ready, you have to figure out how you put it for illustrations. And actually, you have to build next environmental lighting around the model. Because if you put just one model, it doesn't look good. And if you try to tell people this is a very good idea, customer wants to order something like this, it has to be like realistic. And this is one of the end results we made. And it was, as Timo told, we had this problem with the roof. Timo's idea was to put it inside. This could be like exhibition hall or airport or anything. And it's not actually building, it's like a, well, it's some kind of installation or something. And yes, when we make the model, it's, you build the light around the model. It's like a several sources of light. And very important to put people around the model, they get the idea of what size of the model is. And this is one of the end results, and please, Timo.
Yeah, so the problem was not with actually the roof, but this wall and the back wall, so that when the side wind brings water to the wall, you remember how the structure was with the long roof. So there are gaps where the rainwater could leak in the long run. So that's why I thought this type wouldn't suit for outside circumstances. But then we have the other model which works. So here in this model, and here you can better see that the vault is actually also with this fan assembly, that all the butts are facing to this direction to give it more like outlook, and now you can see the scale. this picture is the answer. And you just need to let quite loose here in the end wall, in the upmost end walls, to let it, the arc settle better. So it means like 1.5 centimeters gaps when you assemble the shell, but you can do it with gaskets.
A few words about this model. Normally you see pictures like this in big companies that are trying to sell houses, but it's really difficult to see, but there are two guys here in this picture, and one is standing on the front of the door, and where another one is sitting, backwards to the man, and you can get all kind of imagination, and he has a beard, he's not looking at another man, maybe he's upset for that. You think maybe they're a couple or something, but there's all kind of funny things you can have this. Make it less boring. Yes. But this is like outside model, the lighting is outside much easier. It's actually, you can use large HTML file that is covering all the screen, and all the light comes from naturally. And you can change the sky for night sky or morning sky, and then you have the same screen, and it changes the light very easily. It's like a big file is used for the light, of course fuse spots, but it's much easier to do outside lighting than inside lighting. Yes. Do you have any more? Yes. I can continue with lighting things.
Go ahead.
Yeah. This is another example of outside lighting. First you have this model, and then you have to put it somewhere. This is like a winter forest. And I have a colleague who is doing the environmental modeling for the actual models. I just make this. This is like a very big smoke sauna from Jämsä sauna village. It's originated from there. And I have a Brazilian colleague who made the environment for this picture. But the funny thing is, he lives in Brazil and he never has seen snow. Okay, I sent my colleague pictures. I need a snowy forest environment. Here's some pictures, but, well, this is the first person and he added green plants to the snow. I was explaining they are not anymore green when the winter comes. We have to change these things, but actually, there are this kind of visualization project. You can hire people doing different things, and it's like actually I use other people's skills to do something that I'm not good, like environmental modeling. It's like this is just one result. Yes. It's a smoke sauna, but well, we have same problem. There's this funny thing: is smoke is coming and people are going to sauna.
Yes.
Okay. My friend says, if you go to have a presentation, you always have to talk about artificial intelligence. And yeah, we're doing some arty stuff here, and well, it's like it's something that has revolutionized this how you make visualizations. Like this one, this is taken from internet. It's like have you tried to make pictures with AI? Anyone? Yes? Someone? Yes. It works like you type what you want, and you type, this might be mid-journey, you type, make me a picture of log house in the forest. And this is what you get. Okay. And it's very difficult to explain to artificial intelligence what kind of log house you want. You can write, I want, cleaner log house, what kind of log nodes and everything. And it doesn't work that way. I'm not sure, but maybe it's possible to have the model, like the log house, and tell the artificial intelligence to add that model and make the environment around it. But it's coming, but it's not yet possible. For 2 years, you can actually make any kind of environment for illustration. for any model. It's coming. But now I demonstrate something that I've been using myself. It's like Yes, there's this ChatGPT program that can write this way. Yes, there's this script. I tell the ChatGPT to make a function, and it like helps the program some functions with the model. And here is like a right Blender Python script where the camera goes around 300 degrees, keeping focus center. I give exact instruction for the artificial intelligence, and what I get is I get code. I get Python script from AI that I can add to my model. And it's something, it's very amazing. You can ask AI to some things that you don't actually know, and you can, I don't know anything about Python scripting, but you know, it's free and it works very well. And this following example, I told ChatGPT to make a camera goes around an object like 300 degrees, and I adjust the speed and make animation of log model. And this is the end result. AI did only the camera script, but it worked very well, and I was amazed that sometimes it won't take too long and it makes everything. But it's difficult to explain what AI should do. But here's the end result of the project.
I do the music for you as well. Yeah.
It's not the scale, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
But we are here a couple of days, and if you have any questions, just come to see and ask anything. Like
yeah, we are both selling books.
Yeah.